predictions, 2023. I'm gonna go over my thoughts on what might happen this year, but also discuss some of the other predictions I've heard floating around online. I'm not gonna go too in-depth with all this stuff, because if it happens, I'll just make a video on it when it happens. Okay? Okay. Microsoft was pretty lame at this year's Game Awards. They really did not show anything, which is weird because they have a lot they should be showing. Starfield, Redfall, Forza, none of these games have concrete release dates yet, just a vague time frame of the first half of 2023. I know some have speculated that Microsoft skipped the show because of Activision acquisition stuff, but I don't really buy that. Announcing release dates for existing games shouldn't be a concern for regulators. After the show, I just assumed that these games were getting delayed because the Game Awards were the perfect opportunity to show this stuff off. However, VP of Xbox Games Marketing Aaron Greenberg, alongside a few other rumors, seem to indicate that Microsoft might have an event planned for early 2023. This would be abnormal for Microsoft to do. They tend to hold events in late spring, early summer, but I think it would be absolutely necessary to promote these three games. My prediction is that this event either happens or these games are delayed. I think Sony won't have any spring showcase besides PSVR 2 announcements. Nintendo might have a direct for the new Zelda game, but that's all I'm really expecting right now. Ubisoft's Avatar game, I expect that to get pushed into 2024 to tie in with the third film. I do not expect Spider-Man 2 to get delayed. It seems like it's trying to line up with Spider-Verse for some Sony cross-promotional marketing. Pokemon Let's Go Johto or Black and White remakes. No new COD game, but instead you get MW2 DLC that costs $70. I expect Forspoken to underperform sales expectations. I expect Skull and Bones to underperform sales expectations. I do expect GTA 6 to get announced this year, but I don't expect it to release this year. I don't think Valve will announce their next game this year. No Elder Scrolls 6 trailers or gameplay. In 2022, there is a rumor that Sony was going to buy Square Enix. Now, this didn't pan out. However, that doesn't mean Sony wasn't interested in buying Square, or still interested in buying Square. Considering the somewhat bizarre sale of Square's Western studios to Embracer, I think this could still be a legitimate deal. Of course, buying Square would be a bit odd. Most games from the publisher are timed exclusive to PlayStation anyway, but I imagine in the long run, if Sony wants to continue these deals, a buyout would probably be more cost-effective. On top of that, Square Enix does more than just games, a lot of stuff that should have some synergy between Sony's non-gaming divisions. My prediction here is that Sony is planning a Square Enix acquisition, but won't announce it until regulators have made their final decision on the Xbox Activision acquisition. I don't expect Apple or Meta or Amazon or Google to buy up any major game publishers. I don't expect Microsoft to try to buy anybody else either. There's been a long-standing rumor that Microsoft is preparing to buy Netflix, which I'm gonna say won't happen. There's a lot of reasons for that I won't get into. I don't expect EA to get bought out by Disney either. I regret making that video. I'm gonna throw in a wild card in here. I think Nintendo will buy Ubisoft. Yeah, I know this is pretty unlikely, pretty out of character for Nintendo, but it makes some sense to me. Ubisoft isn't doing so well. I don't expect them to have some grand resurgence in the next few years. I think somebody is going to buy them sooner or later. And I think if any console manufacturer could benefit the most from this publisher, it's Nintendo. Of course, this would be terrible for people on other platforms, but yeah, it's a wild card guess. Speaking of Nintendo, during the past few years, there's been a lot of reports of a Switch Pro that didn't happen. Now, I believe that the Switch Pro was planned, in development, and eventually canceled or turned into the Switch OLED. The fact that the dock supports an output resolution of 4K while the hardware cannot render that is the best evidence I have to support this, but whatever. I don't believe the Switch Pro will release in 2023, or ever. I think that Nintendo will simply move on to the next generation, but not in 2023. Nintendo's president said in 2022 that the Switch was halfway through its life cycle. Now, since the Switch released in 2017, that would mean the Switch would last until 2027. I don't take this as the new hardware is releasing in 2027. That's just too long. He was likely referring to the life cycle of the hardware and when it will stop being produced and supported. I don't want to go too in depth of what I think the next gen Nintendo hardware is, because I might just do a video on that later. Let me know if you want to see that. I believe in 2023 we will start to get the first major leaks of this new device. There are some leaks already online, and they are interesting, but again, this video is not about that. In terms of other hardware, no Pro consoles, I talked about this before, no Nintendo 64 Classic Edition. I also believe this was in development but got cancelled, and that's why we have a 64 controller for the Switch. PS5 Slim rumors and leaks, but no release. Possibly a new Steam Deck with no performance boost, no next-gen PC GPUs, but new cards obviously. Next year is the 10-year anniversary of the Xbox One's release, and the controller hasn't really changed all that much since then. I've made it clear before that I just want to see force feedback, adaptive triggers, all the DualSense features copied onto this Xbox form factor. But recent patents show that Microsoft might be moving in a different direction. They have a weird screen on it. I don't know if this means they're not going to do the other features. I think they still will, but the only thing that's clarified in this patent is that the display tells you which hardware you're connected to. I guess this might be useful if you're connecting to multiple cloud streaming devices, but it seems pointless to me. Just because a patent was released, it does not mean that it's going to be made, but I certainly hope that if it was made, this screen has other features beyond just a notification bar. Microsoft already has announced that they are going to start charging $70 for their first-party releases, and I expect the industry as a whole will embrace this price point as next-gen exclusives become more common. For the most part, given inflation rates, a $60 game in 2005 would be the equivalent of $90 today. Granted, that cost seems to be offset by microtransactions, but I imagine some less savory publishers may begin pushing for $80 games. I think they will still offer a $70 version, but withhold more content on that $70 version, creating a lot of incentive to pay up. You could argue that we're already at that point, but I could see this becoming the new norm in 2023. In terms of hardware, things will also get more expensive. Microsoft has said prices will need to increase on Xbox hardware, and Sony has already done this on PlayStations sold outside of the United States. However, I cannot see Microsoft or Sony actually passing the $500 mark on their premier consoles. $499 might be acceptable to many people, but $549 just seems like a lot more, even though it really isn't. Now, this is because of how we perceive numbers and value and round all this stuff up. Don't worry about it. But because of this, I'm gonna say Microsoft and Sony boost the prices of their cheaper hardware, but just a bit. Now, you don't want to make the cheaper device cost nearly as much as the premium model. And this is also reliant on who pulls the trigger first. I'd say if Sony moves the PS5's digital price to $449, Microsoft might be able to move the Series S up to $349, and if not, I'm going to say only a $20 to $30 price hike on these boxes at most. I'm just not expecting the Series X or the PS5 physical edition to get an increase in price in the US. I don't expect any major revisions to Sony's subscription services, no day one first-party games. I do expect Microsoft to change its pricing and introduce new tiers on their subscription services though. I think Xbox Gold is going away. It's a bizarre relic from the past that many would argue never needed to exist in the first place. I still think you'll have to pay to play games online, but I think this will be replaced with an ad-supported Game Pass tier. Some polls have gone out insinuating Microsoft is planning this, but the only way I could see it working is if it costs nearly the same price as Gold while offering online play capabilities and allow users to access Game Pass titles, albeit with ads. Probably when you boot up a game or close a game or something like that. I could see Game Pass Ultimate going up to $20 a month. I don't know if that'll happen in 2023 or 2024, but I think it's going to happen at some point. Sony's going to port Horizon Forbidden West to the PC. We saw this in the NVIDIA leak, alongside Ghost of Tsushima and Demon's Souls. Ragnarok, that's probably going to happen at the end of 2023. I don't know whether Ratchet & Clank A Rift Apart will ever receive a port. PCs can certainly run this game, but Sony leaned really hard into the marketing that it couldn't run on any other hardware due to the SSD speed. Nowadays, there are many SSDs that are faster than the PS5's drive, and there's some debate whether the game actually needed that SSD in the first place, but I cannot see Sony ever conceding this by porting the game to another platform. 2023 seems to be the year we'll start getting next-gen exclusives consistently. I think you'll still see games announced for the original Xbox One and PS4, games that might even release in 2024, but this seems to be the end of the line for those consoles. I don't think the Steam Deck is quite poised to dominate the market, but I think Valve will manage to create this as a minimum spec that most developers try to accommodate for. I don't think you'll hear the words metaverse or NFTs and crypto from major publishers anymore. Instead, you'll probably see publishers begin to promote mobile as the next big opportunity for growth. I can see Microsoft managing to increase its market share significantly, fueled by Starfield in particular. I think PSVR 2 might be popular for enthusiasts, but I can't see it taking off at that price point. Retro mods with path tracing will be a huge hit. Halo Infinite will be... It's Halo Infinite. I've seen rumors that the Battle Royale or Halo Infinite itself will be moving to Unreal Engine instead of the Slipspace engine. This could be the case for the Battle Royale. The Slipspace engine is completely busted, but if they're moving engines, the Battle Royale is not releasing anytime this year or possibly not even next year. You can't just switch engines like that. The game would need to be developed from the ground up, and it would probably play quite differently than Halo has for the past few decades on that Blam engine. Now, I think this would be a smart move if you want to try to reinvigorate the franchise with a spin-off in the same vein as Apex Legends, but it would take a lot of time. It would also require a different application, and I can't see Microsoft tying this game to Infinite if this is the case. Infinite itself will not move to Unreal Engine 5. That's just not how this works. They're not going to spend like 3 years rebuilding this whole game from the ground up just to re-release it, you know? Might as well make a new game. I still have doubts even that the Battle Royale would move to a new engine, especially Unreal. I would expect something like id Tech to make more financial sense from Microsoft's perspective. They don't have to pay royalties on that. I think Sony will announce a new Twisted Metal game. So yeah, maybe next year I'll revisit this list, see what I got right, see what I got wrong, and maybe we'll have a good laugh about it. Or I just won't ever bring this up again. That's a prediction for you to make.